So this is part 2 of playing backups and imports on the original Sony PlayStation. In part 1 I went over things like mod chips, disk swapping, where I actually showed you the disk swapping technique, and how you can use compatible cartridges like Action Replay, Equalizers, Game Sharks, etc. And you can flash compatible cartridges with Unirom, which will allow you to play backups and imports on the console pretty easily as well. So if you're interested in all that, then definitely check that out first, because otherwise what I'm saying here may not make too much sense to you. So again, we've got an array of backup discs. I also talked about the different types of media and how every CDR can be different. Every brand of CDR can be completely different. A CDR isn't just a CDR. You can have issues if you get really, really bad ones where they don't work particularly well on your machine. So check that out in part 1. So for this part then, I need to talk about a couple of other things that you may encounter that may kind of trip you up if you're playing backup games on a Sony PlayStation. In particular, one of these things I encountered back in the day, and it's something that I completely forgot about during part 1, but I need to mention it because you may come across this yourself. So there is a handful of games out there that have something called Anti-Modchip protection in them. Here I've actually got a backup copy of the Japanese version of Dino Crisis. As you can see, I've even written on there Anti-Modchip and marked it up so I know that this particular game is an Anti-Modchip game. And what that essentially means is, if you play that disc in a console that has a mod chip, but that mod chip isn't a stealth mod chip, so some of the older mod chips, for instance, weren't stealth, and the mod chips that I've got in my 1002 consoles aren't stealth either, this game will not boot. And you'll actually get quite a scary looking message in Japanese text with a no entry sign on the screen, as you'll see in this video clip, basically telling you you can't play the game. Your console's been modified, so the software has been terminated, and it's as simple as that. With a stealth mod chip, basically you can play these games, because the stealth mod chip, what it does, once it's got past the initial boot up of injecting the region code so the game will start to load, start to boot up, it then switches itself off. It then basically goes to sleep, which then means that during the loading process of this, when it checks back to see if that code is still being injected in, as in symptomatic of a mod chip doing its thing, it throws up that screen, of course, if it does see that that code's still being injected in. But with a stealth mod chip, it won't still be injected in because the stealth mod chip will be turned off, so this game will continue to load. In my SCPH5552 console, it's got a stealth mod chip, so this game boots absolutely fine in that console without an issue. Another workaround as well, you'll see that I've got an Explorer cheat cartridge screen here, and I show you a code which disables the anti-mod chip protection, essentially. It disables it looking for the mod chip. So with that code enabled, and then booting this game in a mod chipped console without a stealth mod chip, this game continues to load up. So definitely have a look. If you don't have a stealth mod chip in your machine and you want to play, it's like a couple of handfuls of games, and I'm not sure if any of the PAL games are affected by this, then you might be able to just use an Action Replay or Game Shark or Explorer code that will stop the anti-mod chip protection from kicking in and stopping you from booting the game. So that's definitely something to be aware of. It's something I kind of knew about, but I completely forgot to talk about it in part 1. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. Now, I've got Resident Evil 3 Nemesis here because this game has another type of protection. And again, there's a whole load of these games. Again, it's probably a couple of handfuls, I can't remember the exact number, that have another type of protection into them that's referred to as Libcrypt. And basically, it's another part of the disc that can't sort of be replicated by normal CD drives. So, for instance, like I did back in the day when I was a filthy, dirty, naughty little pirate, I borrowed Resident Evil 3 Nemesis off of a friend of mine that had it, who lived down the street from me, tried to make a copy of it, and then wondered why that copy wouldn't boot. It would get to the sort of disclaimer screen telling you the game was full of violence, gore, and whatever else, and it wouldn't proceed any further. And that's because the Libcrypt protection, there's information stored on a part of the disc that you can't copy, and of course it's not present on this disc, so when the game essentially is looking for that information during the loading process, it doesn't see it on the disc, it stops, it halts, it doesn't go any further. You can get patches, the same as you can with anti-Modchip games. There are patches that you can apply to an image of these games that have got, Libcrypt or Anti-Modchip that will remove that, and therefore the game will work normally. Also, back in the day when I used EPSXE on the PC to emulate the PlayStation, and use my genuine copy of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which is this very one that's in front of us today, the same thing would happen. It'd get to the disclaimer screen and stop, because again, the emulator, for whatever reason, didn't know how to deal with Libcrypt, so the game wouldn't load, it would just stop. So again, you had to patch the game to be able to play it, even with EPSXE back in the day. So this is another thing you need to be aware of. You can patch the games, so patch an ISO, for instance, of Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. V-Rally 2 is another one that I know will get to a point where you'll be going through the menus, everything seems good, and then you'll be stuck on a screen where it's loading, and it'll just stay loading forever, and it won't actually load the stage and the game, so you'll be stuck. So that's definitely something else to be aware of, is Libcrypt protected games. Have a look and see whether the game you want to play and the game you want to burn a copy of is a Libcrypt protected game, because if it is, there's going to need to be some more things that you will need to do. So yeah. Now, disc swapping, so a console that has no mod chip whatsoever, just moving back to the anti-Modchip protection, just to finish this video off. If you do disc swapping with an anti-Modchip game, and again that console isn't mod chipped, which is why you're using the disc swapping method, the game should boot absolutely fine, because again, you're not having the mod chip doing its thing of injecting the boot code in, the region code, so the game will just load as normal, because the anti-mod chip protection won't see that code being injected in, so the game will continue to load. So that's definitely something that you won't have to worry about with anti-mod chip games if your console doesn't have a mod chip and you're booting it using a disc swap trick. But there is another pitfall to disc swapping tricks, and that is that if the game has audio tracks as audio, so they're like CD audio tracks that you can play in a CD player, doing the disc swap trick with those, you'll find the audio tracks won't play. That was something I was also going to demonstrate, but unfortunately I haven't recorded the footage. It might be something I do further down the line. But if you use a burn game that's got CD audio tracks and you use a disc swap to play this game on an unmodified console, you won't get the CD audio tracks. You'll hear silence where you'd normally hear that. So that's another pitfall of using disc swapping with a game that's got audio tracks in this particular case. So guys, I hope you found this interesting and useful to those of you that have stumbled across these videos and helping you play PlayStation backups and imported games on your machine. So guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again soon.